Hi friends, today I am going to discuss about for each loop in Java. The for each loop, also called the enhanced for loop, is a simple and efficient way to iterate over arrays and collections in Java. I have already explained in detail about arrays in my previous videos, and collections also same like arrays, but they are growable. They doesn't have fixed size. We can decrease and increase the size of collection. So I'll explain collections in my future videos, but just remember that for each loops can be used to iterate collections also. And for each loop was introduced in Java 5, that is JDK 1.5 version. So let's see the syntax of for each loop. We use for keyword, then the data type of variable and variable which is used to point the elements in the array or collection, and the collection or array, and the body of the for each loop. Type is the data type of elements, and variable represents each element during iteration, and collection or array, the array or collection being iterated over. So let's see an example. Here I have taken 1D array with 5 numbers 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. Using for each loop, I am iterating this array. Let's see in the compiler. Int 1D array ARR is equals to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and using for each loop, this is a type of variables, that is type of array int type, and num is a variable which is pointing to the elements inside the array, and array is the array to iterate the elements. So here whenever I print the num, for each iteration num is pointing to the each element. So in first iteration num points to 10, in second iteration num points to 20, in third iteration num points to 30, like that it points to each and every element in the array. So whenever I run the code, it prints all the 5 elements 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. And let's see another example which is 2D array. And we are here we'll see how to iterate 2D array using for each loop. So here I have taken matrix with the 2D array. So the 3 by 3 matrix. Here for iterating 2D array, we should use for in for loop. So the complexity of is O of n square. So outer for represents each row in the matrix. Inner for represent each element in each row in the matrix. So outer for is the data type is 1D array. So it grabs the first row, and then inner for grabs each element in the first row. So whenever we print num, it points to elements inside the rows. So whenever I run the code, it prints the entire matrix. In the first iteration, it takes the first row, and then inside for loop is used to iterate the elements in the first row. So this is how elements in the 2D matrix is being iterated using for each loop. While using for each loop, the outer dimension is 1D, inner dimension is variable, normal variable. And let's see limitations of for each loop. First limitation, cannot modify elements. In for each loop, we cannot easily modify the elements. Here we can't modify the elements in for each loop. So while we are iterating each and every element in the for each loop, if you want to modify, let's see in this compiler, if you want to modify the num is equals to num into 2. We are modifying here the value of num. So whenever we print the array again, the values are not being modified. Arrays dot toString of array. Here, whenever we print the array, the values are not being modified. The output should be 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. Here we have got error arrays. Yeah, we have to import the package. Arrays is present in util package. So we have to import java.util.arrays. So whenever we run the code, it should output 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. So the element inside the array is not being modified. So we can't modify the elements inside the array using for each loop. And to modify the elements, we use traditional loops, that is normal loops. Second limitation, cannot iterate in reverse order. We can't iterate elements in reverse order using for each loop. It is only happened using traditional loops. So whenever we want to iterate in reverse order, here we can use traditional loops, that is int I is equals to the last index is 4 because it is 0 indexed, I greater than or equals to 0, I minus minus. So whenever we print array of I, system.out.println of array of I using normal for loop, traditional for loop, we can print the elements in reverse order. Whenever we run the code, it prints the elements in 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. So the elements are being printed in reverse order. So if you want to avoid the next line, just remove the ln in print ln, we have to remove the ln. So whenever we run the code, the output is 50, 40, 30, 20, and 10. So, but by using for each, we can't do this. Only traditional for loops can iterate in reverse order. Third, no access to index. Using for each, we can't access to index. We can't get index using for each. Here, if you take int num in array, we can't print the index. We can't take the index from here. We just access the elements inside the array. We can't access indices. So no access to index. So if index access is needed, go to traditional for loop or normal for loop. Both one. Works only with iterable objects. Iterable objects like arrays or collections like array list, hash set, linked list, like that. This for each only works with that, but it cannot be used with non-iterable objects such as maps. I'll explain in detail about maps in my collections chapter, but just remember that it cannot be used with maps. So maps have a separate syntax. We have to use like these maps. So we can't iterate maps using the for each. We can use a separate syntax like this. I'll explain about this syntax in my future videos. What is entry set and what is entry? I'll explain about that in my future videos. And when to use for each to. Best for reading values from arrays or collection. Just reading, not updating or not modifying. Just if you have only requirement of reading, then we can use for each loop. And for each loop improves code readability and reduces errors like indexing errors, index out of range, that errors. We doesn't get that errors in for each loop. And suitable when index access is not required. And now we go for exercise. Please pause the video and answer the questions. First question. What is the primary advantage of using a for each loop in Java? It allows modification of array. No, no. It provides direct access to the index. No. It simplifies iteration and reduce errors. Yeah. Option C is correct. It supports both forward and reverse. This is also not correct. Second question. What will be the output of the following code? Int array is equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the elements are being iterated using for each and modified. But whenever we print the array, those elements are not being modified. So original array is going to be printed. So option A is correct. Because using for each loop, we can't modify the elements inside the array. Third question. Which of the following is not a limitation of the for each loop? Cannot modify elements. Yeah, it is a limitation. Cannot access the index. It is also a limitation. Cannot iterate in reverse order. It is also a limitation. Cannot iterate over collections in Java. Cannot iterate over collections in Java. It is not a limitation, but we can iterate over collections in Java. Like we can iterate array list, we can iterate hash set, linked list. We can iterate over collections in Java. So it's not a limitation. Option D is correct. Fourth question. What will happen if you try to iterate over a map using a for each loop like this? Yeah, here I have taken map and I have added two elements inside the map and first string value map. It's not a correct syntax for iterating maps, so it gets a compile time error, compilation error. Option B is correct. Fifth, in which scenario is the for each loop most suitable? When you need to iterate over an array and modify element? No. When you need to iterate in reverse order? No. When you need to simply read values from any collection? Yeah. Option C is correct. Thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe for more videos.